Okay, there is a secondary meaning in that parable. And here's what it is. If you want to do great works, you've got to go out and catch fish because the money's always in the mouth of the fish. You baptize 50 people and you'll be able to do a lot of different things that you weren't able to do before. Now, here's my favorite difference. In hunting, the animal doesn't have a choice. In fishing, the fish has a choice. He chooses whether to take the bait or not. In hunting, you have to be a skilled shot. It's not a thing for amateurs, because if you're a bad shot, you're not going to hit anything. If you're fishing, anybody could put a bait and a pole in the water in there. By the way, let's go ahead and clear something up right now. I was talking to somebody about a month ago, and he was talking to me about somebody he was studying with, and he said, "Brother Yasko, this man has done a lot of things, and he's got a lot in his life that he needs to straighten out before I can baptize him." Now, hang on a second. Last time I looked, you got to catch a fish in order to clean him. I've never caught a fish that was ready to eat. If we're going to take people and introduce them to the kingdom of God, they don't have to clean up. Let's let God clean them up. No, don't feed the animals, okay? So thank you for the applause. Here's what we need to do. We need to identify our place to fish. You know, that's important. I know lots of people that travel thousands of miles to go fishing, and why? We have a really good lake just right down here. So we need to identify where to fish. Jesus said in Acts chapter 1:8, "You'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, all of Judea and Samaria, and into every part of the world." Now I want you to notice this verse tells us not only what to do, but where to do it. You see, first it tells us to be a witness. A witness, anybody ever been a witness in a court case? Let me tell you, I've been a witness several times in a court case, in different court cases. Here's what they want you to do as a witness. They just want you to tell what you saw. They don't want you to give commentary. They don't want you to give your opinion. Just tell us what you saw. First time I ever witnessed in a court case, it was a young man that knocked out a bunch of those in the church bus. I saw him do it. And here's the odd thing. He went to church with us on Sunday. And so I saw him do it. He got arrested for it. And I really felt for the kid. And we were up in court, and the prosecuting attorney said to me, "Did you see this young man knock the windows out?" And I said, "Before I answer that question, can I tell you a little bit about what this kid's grown up with?" And the judge looked at me and said, "No, answer the question." And so I tried another tactic, and the judge looked at me and said, "Son, answer the question." And the third time I did that, the judge looked at me and said, "I can send you downstairs in the cell until you decide whether or not you're going to follow directions." Did you see the... Yes, I did. That was it. I most certainly did. I wasn't anything after that. And so we share from experiences what God's doing in our life. God's not asking you to be the attorney. God's not asking you to prosecute nor defend the case. God says you don't have to argue anybody into heaven. God does expect us to share what has happened to us. Then he tells us where? In Jerusalem. We talked about this, but I want to cover it again. Because what is our Jerusalem? Jesus said, start where you are. Just start where you are. And your Jerusalem is here. It is in Massachusetts. Now you say, well, hang on, there are more fertile mission fields. You know what? I preached in Seattle for several years, and they're not particularly religious in Seattle. They've got the mountains and the trees, and I found that refreshing because there they didn't tell me what the Church of Christ believed. They never heard the Church of Christ. You go down to where the Church of Christ is thick, like we are, and somebody says, oh, I know y'all. Yeah, y'all are the ones that don't have music. Oh, yeah, we do. It's just real pure, If the guy, our place, if the power goes out, we still get to worship God. If the trombone player gets a fever, still get to worship God. And so you don't have, I think in Massachusetts, you really don't have the people that are going to tell you what you believe, even though you don't particularly believe that. He says, you're Jerusalem. And then he says, why Jerusalem? Because this is where our sphere of influence is. This is where you guys are from. It's amazing how many people have, where are you from? Were you always raised in Boston? Yeah, born and raised in Boston. See, I think that is absolutely marvelous. Because you've got a place, you've got something you can find, you've got something you can have in common with. I'll talk to anybody. My wife will attest to that. She talked me into going and getting my nails done. And I was sitting there talking my feet too. And I was sitting there talking, and the lady was polishing them. So what's your name? And how many kids? Are you married? How many kids do you have? Are you a person of faith? Do you go to church? And Dina's going to me, David, just let her do the nails. And I'm going, no, I'm going to get a friend out of this thing. So don't be afraid to talk. Then he says, go to Judea. That's somewhere around you that's not you. And then he says, go to Samaria, which means you go to people that are in Massachusetts but not close to you, and that are of a different culture. Now, I read before I came here that in the greater Boston area, they speak 140 languages. You want to do a mission work? Go to McDonald's. Chances are the person behind the counter is not from your culture nor your country. You don't have to go very far to get to your Samaria and that. Now, because this subject, I wanted to make my case for, is it important for us to be evangelistic? Yes, it is God's will for us to be evangelistic. How do you welcome people into the congregation? Well, first, in order for us to welcome people in the congregation, we have to understand that this is what we are put on this earth to do. Did you know that you can do everything in heaven that you could do on earth with the exception of two things? You can sing in heaven, you can laugh in heaven, you can have a great time in heaven. There are two things that you do on earth that you can't do in heaven. One is sin. You can't sin in heaven. Everybody there, it's a perfect place. Everybody there is of God. Number two, you don't need to evangelize in heaven because everybody's saved. All right, now of the two, which do you think God left us here to do? To evangelize or to sin? Well, he left us here to tell other people about Jesus. So let me give you a reason, and then tomorrow we're going to get a little bit further down in how you build a bridge and evangelism and reaching out. But let me give you some ways to start stocking your fish pond. Okay? Let me just give you some ways that are biblical. And the number one key to stocking your fishing pond is to show respect. Let me tell you something about Jesus. Jesus did not approve of what people did, but he accepted people. I had somebody tell me a couple of weeks ago, in the church we've got to get ready to confront this whole gay marriage and gay situation. No, we don't need. It's gone. It's there. Now, what do you do? What do you do? Love them. Try to bring them into Jesus. You say, well, what happens if they continue their life? Then you didn't tell them right about Jesus. I saw a thing really good that talks about people and lifestyles. And if you want me to expect who you are or respect who you are, I can't do that because you didn't respect who you were in that. So when we speak to people, be tactful, not just truthful. We're to speak the truth in love. And so because the most common form of being rude is how we talk to people. Proverbs 15:33. What a joy it is to find just the right word for just the right occasion. You see, he's talking about tact. Tact is thinking before we speak. So if we're going to learn how to get along, we've got to figure out that what we say to somebody either detracts from our character or adds to our character. Now, tactfulness is what I call relational lubrication. It minimizes friction against us. We've got less to retract. I cannot overemphasize how important it is to use tact in our everyday lives. Let me give you a definition of tact, okay? Tact is what you think but don't say. Tact is the ability to make a point without making an enemy. Tact is the ability to tell somebody to go jump off a cliff in such a way that they're going to enjoy the trip down. All right? That means knowing when a discussion is getting counterproductive. That means using the brain God gave us, Proverbs 15:4. The tongue that brings healing is a tree of life, but a deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. You know what? You break a physical bone, it heals in 5 or 6 weeks. All right? You break somebody's bones emotionally, and it takes years to come through that. I was growing up, we used to say, you did too. I'll let you finish it for me. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never. That is a lie. Number 2, when you're served by people, be understanding, not demanding. Luke 6:31. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Look, we don't like when people demand stuff from us. Okay? We want them to be understanding. So let me ask you this. How do we treat the people who serve us? I think one of the great tests of Christian character is how we treat the people that wait on us at restaurants. You know, we've got some folks who either were wait staff or are wait staff. And they will tell you the most difficult people that they have to deal with are folks that stop in after church and stay 2 hours and let their kids grind up the crackers in the floor and leave without giving a tip. You know, that we treat them with respect, or do we treat them with rudeness? See, the secret of great service is to treat people with respect. Here's what we do. If somebody's having a bad day and gives us, and our food isn't like how it should be, we're going to give them a little bit bigger tip. Because they don't want to give you bad service, folks. That's their job. You don't know if they spent all night, last night, staying up with a sick kid. And they're working on 2 hours of sleep. And they're pulling a 10-hour shift as a single parent, trying to bring something in and do that. So that's understanding. The last thing we need to be, with so much of the grace of God that has been given to us, is to be rude. Proverbs 16:21, a wise, mature person is known for his understanding. The more pleasant his words, the more persuasive he is. It is in the Bible that you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. And so if you want to be more persuasive, be pleasant, because we are never persuasive when we are abrasive. Now, the best place to practice this is home, because we're often rudest to the people we love. It's amazing. We're more polite to strangers than we are each other. And so remember when you first went out, remember how that was with your wife? Oh, I mean, you opened the door and you read poetry and you did all kinds of stuff, and I'll get it for you, sweetheart. And you've been married about 5 years, and you say, you know, you've gone up to get something for the 5th time, and you're saying, look, you may have broken your leg, but there are 2 bones in your leg, and you only broke one, and you only need one to walk on. Pick up and get it yourself. You know, it bugs Dina when I like spicy food, but it makes my nose run. Bugs Dina when I blow my nose at the table. And I think that's not anything to worry. Why in the world? Why is she getting on to me about that? And then we were out eating somewhere, and some guy blew his nose the whole dinner, and I got her point. I understand that definitely. Number 3, when you disagree with people, be gentle, not judgmental. Jesus accepted everyone. You know, I imagine if you and I spent a couple of weeks together, we'd come up with some things we'd disagree with on each other, and we're Christians. And so, you know, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to go around with a badge and police all the believers? Here's what Romans says, Romans 14:12-13. So that each of us will give an account of himself to God. Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in your brother's way. God says when you disagree with somebody, there are 2 things to remember. Number one, every one of us is going to give an account of every word that we've ever said to God. That scares me. I don't know if you believe this or not, but I can get in trouble with my mouth. I'll talk before I think. Second, Here's what we need to remember. You're not God. I'm not God. You know, God doesn't need any help being God. Let me put this another way. The unbelieving world is not accountable to me. I'm accountable to them because of the gospel of Christ, but they are not accountable to me. As a Christian, we're accountable to each other. We're not going to see eye to eye on everything, but we should be able to disagree without devastating the people we don't agree with. Congregation I serve is about, when you include the Hispanic group, it's about 3/4 what we would call minority. Now here's what that means. That means we've got some folks that are hard and fast Democrats. And we've got some folks that are hard and fast Republicans. And how in the world do you get them to agree on things, especially when our political situation is blown apart? Well, you know what? Here's how we do that. We don't focus on the elephant or the donkey. We focus on the lamb. That's where we focus. We're not interested in the donkey. We're not interested in the elephant. You know, here's the thing, and here's the thing that bothers me, that it seems like that all the information you get, the folks come to me as a preacher and say, you know, you need to preach about this country and where this country's going and all that kind of stuff. You know what? We do that, we're playing into the devil's hands. God raises up kings and deposes kings, and it really doesn't matter so much about this country, what's going on in the White House, as it does what's going on in the Lord's house. James 3:16-17, for where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. That means if God's Spirit is living in us, we're going to find some common ground. And that is Jesus Christ. So if you're in disagreement and want to know who has the Spirit of God, just listen. If they're argumentative, if they're destructive, and they're devastating, stop listening. Because they don't have the Spirit of God. You know, we have folks that shoot arrows of truth from time to time. And we'll all have to do that. It's within the scope of God before we shoot those arrows to dip them in a little honey. Okay? Number 4. When you share your faith with people, respect them, don't reject them. Colossians 4:5-6. Be tactful with those who are not Christians. Talk to them agreeably and with a flavor of wit, and try to fit your answers to the needs of each one. That's from the Jerusalem Bible. I like that particular translation. I don't know how they do it, but I know folks that can take positive messages of the gospel and spin them negative before you know it. And you're walking out of there and you're listening to these folks, you're thinking, did I hear the same thing they heard? They take the gospel of Christ with all the good news that's in there and they beat people over the head with it. The last time I looked at Psalm 23, it said the rod and the staff were there to comfort the sheep, not to beat the sheep over the head. And there are a lot of evangelism methods that are put downs. I'm saved. You're not. I'm good. You're bad. You know, we need to never lose fact that sharing the good news is one starving person telling some other starving person where the food is. By the way, when you're talking to people, this is something I believe very, very heavily in. If you're talking to people, don't tell them how it is. Tell them how it could be. The churches that you attend, our attendance has fallen off since COVID. Okay, imagine what it's going to be like a year from now when the people do come back and you've got another 50 or 100 people that are new Christians because you went out and you went fishing, and when you fish, you're always going to catch some fish. And so imagine what that's going to be like. Imagine it's going to be like when you have to get there early to get a parking place. Imagine what it's going to be like when you have to figure out how in the world you're going to fit everybody in. Look, I know most churches of Christ like it quiet, but we will tolerate the sound of folding chairs opening because we don't have enough room in the pew and water splashing from people being baptized. Number 5, when people are rude to you, respond politely. It only adds fuel to the fire. Would we respond to rudeness with rudeness? God tells us not to. Now that's hard. Because when somebody's rude to me, I want to be rude right back. Somebody honks their horn at me, I want to honk it back a little bit harder and a little bit louder. Westbury is in what would be called an inner city part. We've got ghetto on three sides of us coming in, which means when I'm on the way home from church, there's a lot of competing, the air is competing with a lot of different music. I don't know the song, but there is one that I've heard for 20 years that goes like this. Boom, 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 boom. Don't know what it is. I do know I went and put the best stereo system that I could afford with the biggest speakers in my car, so that when we were at the red light and I was hearing the boom, I could tune that up. See, I like a little Meatloaf. He just died this year, raised in the church, that little bat out of hell. Fires are screaming and the dogs are howling. You're going to get a little of that. But kindness pays. You may have heard this, and I will finish. We had a fellow died a couple of years ago named Isaiah Jackson. Isaiah was a refugee from Sudan. Came over with about 20 Sudanese that basically hit the lottery. They applied for visas and as far as being refugees, and they got them. And one day, Isaiah and a few other men came in to services one Sunday morning. A lot of folks from Westbury, including my father, sat down and talked with them, and as a result, baptized most of them. We got Sudanese speakers at Westbury. In the teaching and maturing and process that went on, brother, there were three of them that went to Sunset. Three of the Sudanese students that went to Sunset. One of them, I don't know where he is. Another one lives in Searcy, Arkansas, and translates a sermon that Eddie Clower writes. I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's through the Bible. He translates that into Arabic so that it goes out. Isaiah came home and told his wife, Lena, I'm going back to the Sudan. And she said, you're crazy. There's war over there. Over here, there's peace. Over there, our neighbors are getting killed by rival tribes. Over here, we can worship God. You're crazy. And he said, I have a responsibility to my people to tell them about Jesus. So Isaiah went back. 7,000 baptisms later, 13 congregations, 2 schools of preaching. Little small, slight man. He passed away recently. A little small, slight man. I would always say to him, Isaiah, you need to come and preach. And he would say, next time. But he would never tell us when he was coming back. And so we never got to hear him. I know folks that saw him preach and said it was a different guy. There was a fire in him that could not be quenched. Okay, an interesting story, before I get back to this story, is that I had the honor of preaching Isaiah's funeral. And the family didn't have, he wanted to be buried in the Sudan, and people didn't, and the family didn't have money, and we're trying to figure out how to raise money to do all that kind of stuff for him. Got to the viewing, they had a viewing a couple hours before the funeral. Got to the viewing, funeral home, popped open the casket, wasn't Isaiah. It was the guy in Isaiah's clothes, but it wasn't Isaiah. Not unless Isaiah had changed color and grown a beard, and he had not. Now, the funeral home people were just aghast. I was sitting there with a couple other preachers, Tim Brumfeld from Sunset, and we were saying to each other, nobody will ever top this story. Whenever we start telling about what happened to us, we are tops. We've got it. Anyway, they finally got him back there. I found out to the Sudanese, we were 2 hours late. That means nothing to them. They sat and sang. It was a marvelous time. A fabulous time. We preached him on. Funeral home came in and said, look, we are sorry this happened, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to We're going to comp the funeral and pay so the family doesn't know anything, and we're going to pay for the body to fly back to the Sudan. Problem solved. Problem solved. I said to Grace, his daughter, AIM student graduate, I knew he wasn't in that casket for a reason. Lord used it for good. He gave me something and asked me if I would preach this. You may have heard it before. It's not original with Isaiah. It's certainly not original with me. But Isaiah said, you always want to know how I feel. And this is how I feel. Let me read this to you. An old African preacher was arrested by Islamic Revolutionary Guards for preaching Jesus, and they sentenced him to death. The night before he was to die, one of the soldiers came in and said, we will let you live if you renounce the name of Jesus and say that Allah is your God and Muhammad is his prophet. We'll give you the rest of the night to think about it. The next morning, he handed the guard a letter. And here's what it said. I am part of the fellowship of the unashamed. I have Holy Spirit power, and the die has been cast. I have stepped over the line. The decision has been made. I am a disciple of his. I won't look down, look back, let up, slow down, or back away, or be still. My past is redeemed. My present makes sense, and my future is secure. I'm finished and done with low living, sight walking, small planning, smooth knees, colorless dreams, tame visions, mundane talking, chintzy giving, and dwarf goals. I no longer need preeminence, prosperity, position, promotion, plaudits, or popularity. I do not have to be right, first, top, recognized, praised, regarded, or rewarded. I now live by the presence, lean on faith, love by patience, lift by prayer, and labor by power. My face is set, my gait is fast, my goal is heaven, my road is narrow, my way is rough, my companions few, my guide reliable, my mission clear. I cannot be bought, compromised, detoured, lured away, turned back, deluded, or delayed. I will not flinch in the face of sacrifice, hesitate in the presence of adversity, negotiate at the table of the enemy, ponder at the pool of popularity, or meander in the maze of mediocrity. I won't give up, shut up, let up, or burn up until I've preached up, prayed up, paid up, stored up, and stayed up for the cause of Christ. I am a disciple of Jesus. I must go till he comes, give till I drop, preach till all know, and work till he stops. And when he comes down to get his own, he'll have no problem recognizing me, for my colors will be true.
Thank you, Brother Yasko. You were worth all the inconvenience to getting you here. That's a little private joke, so if you want to know, talk to me and him, and we can share with you how all this has come about. But we really appreciate you for being with us. And he will be speaking again to us on tomorrow, so you haven't heard the end of him yet. I want to make a couple of announcements, and then we'll be ending this session. And you'll have a few minutes to visit the exhibitors on your way to the workshop classes. We have individuals situated in the various hallways who can direct you if you're looking for a class and can't seem to find it. They will catch you when they see you looking kind of confused. You have a program booklet that lists where the classes are, and we want to make sure, because there was no pre-registration for the classes, you can go to any class that you're interested in going to. At 12:30, we have a leadership box luncheon that we're offering again this year. And so if you are a church leader and would like to attend this luncheon, it's for leaders and their wives, please sign up at the registration table. I believe we have room for 66 people. So if you're interested in being a part of that, please sign up at the lectureship table. Again, it is leaders and their wives. Some of you have asked about the but the T-shirts that some of us are wearing. Well, these T-shirts are a gift from those individuals who pre-registered for the lectureship 3 years ago. And they have allowed us to keep their money. They didn't ask for a refund. And so as a way of thanking them for allowing us to hold their money for 3 years, they're getting this free T-shirt. So